that feeling where something feels off? Like the world tilts ever so slightly, just enough to make your stomach churn and your skin crawl? That's how I felt when I first moved into the house. On the surface, everything seemed perfect. A 2-story colonial-style home in a quiet suburban neighborhood, complete with a white picket fence and a backyard big enough for barbecues. It was everything I thought I wanted, or at least needed. My wife had left me 2 years ago. She took the kids, and honestly, most of my life with her. I didn't blame her. Being around me back then was like being around a black hole. I was distant, angry, and broken. But I thought maybe this house could be a fresh start. Maybe if I showed I had my act together, the kids would visit more often. Hell, maybe they'd even want to live with me someday. But from the moment I set foot inside, the house didn't feel like a home. The air was heavy, almost oppressive, and it carried a faint smell of damp earth, like a graveyard after rain. The first few days were uneventful, aside from the strange sensation of being watched. I convinced myself it was just nerves. Moving into a new place, especially one so quiet, can play tricks on your mind. But then I started hearing them. It began faintly, almost imperceptible. Late at night, when the world was still and silent, I'd hear the distant sound of children laughing. Not the joyous kind of laughter that warms your heart, though. This was different. Hollow, cold, and wrong, like they were mocking me. I assumed it was the neighbors' kids. After all, this was a family-friendly neighborhood. But the more I listened, the more I realized the sound wasn't coming from outside. It was inside the house. I checked every room, every closet, even the attic. Nothing. No kids, no TVs left on, no logical explanation, just silence. A week later, I started seeing things. At first, it was just quick flashes, a shadow darting past the corner of my eye, a dark shape lingering in the reflection of the hallway mirror. I told myself it was just my imagination, that I was tired. But then, one night, as I was watching TV, I saw it clearly. A small figure, about the size of a child, standing in the doorway to the kitchen. My heart froze. I whipped my head around, but it was gone. The room felt colder after that, and the faint sound of laughter began again, just barely audible over the hum of the TV. The first time I saw them, really saw them, was about 2 weeks after I moved in. It was around 3 a.m. when I woke up to the sound of giggling outside my bedroom door. It wasn't faint this time. It was loud and clear, like they were standing right there. I grabbed the baseball bat I kept under my bed and crept to the door. My heart was pounding so hard I thought it might explode. Slowly, I turned the doorknob and opened the door. 2 children stood at the end of the hallway. A boy and a girl, maybe 6 or 7 years old. Their clothes were old-fashioned, faded, tattered, and covered in dirt. The boy's head hung low, his face obscured by messy black hair. The girl, though, she was looking right at me. Her eyes were black, not dark brown or shadowed, but completely void of light, like 2 endless pits. And her smile, God, her smile. It stretched too wide for her face, revealing sharp, jagged teeth. "Do you want to play with us?" she whispered, her voice dripping with malice. I slammed the door and locked it, my hands shaking. For the rest of the night, I sat on the floor with my back against the door, clutching the bat like it was the only thing keeping me alive. The next day, I couldn't stay in the house. I needed air, needed to feel the sun on my skin. But as I sat on the front porch, my mind raced. Who were those kids? What did they want? I decided to dig into the house's history. A quick search online revealed that the house was nearly a century old and had been sold numerous times. But in the 1950s, something horrific happened. A man named William Grayson had lived there with his wife and 2 children. Neighbors described him as quiet but kind, a family man. But one night, something inside him snapped. He killed his wife with a hammer and drowned the children in the bathtub before hanging himself in the attic. My stomach turned as I read the details. The children's bodies were never properly buried. Some said their spirits remained in the house, bound by their father's unspeakable act. After learning the truth, the activity in the house escalated. At night, I'd hear footsteps running up and down the hallway, doors slamming on their own. Objects would move or disappear entirely, only to reappear in strange places. One night, I woke up to find the girl standing at the foot of my bed. Her face was inches from mine, her black eyes boring into me. "Why don't you love us, Daddy?" she hissed. I screamed and scrambled out of bed, but when I turned on the light, she was gone. The last night I spent in that house was the worst. I woke up to the sound of water running. Groggy and disoriented, I stumbled to the bathroom. The tub was filled to the brim with murky, blood-red water, and standing in it were the children. Their skin was pale and bloated, their hair dripping wet. Behind them stood their father, his face twisted in rage, his hands gripping a blood-stained hammer. "You can't leave," the girl said, her voice echoing in my head. "You're ours now." The father raised the hammer, and I ran. I don't remember much after that, just the sound of my own screaming as I drove away. I sold the house for whatever I could get and never looked back. But sometimes, late at night, I still hear them, the laughter, the giggling, and I wonder, did I ever really escape?